Hi everyone. Since recording this episode, Lewis Moody has shared that he's been diagnosed with motor neuron disease. True to form, he's facing it with the same courage, honesty and heart that defined his rugby career. This conversation captures everything we love about Lewis: his leadership, his resilience and his humanity. We're deeply honoured to share his story. We'd also invite you to make a donation to Lewis's fundraising appeal. The link is in the show notes. Thank you.
I went down and absolutely fell in love with it because rugby was full contact when I started playing at the age of 5. And, just throwing myself around, tackling people, getting in the mud. Oh, I absolutely loved it. I went from watching Martin Johnson, Rory Underwood, Graham Rowntree, Neil Back, who were all my schoolboy heroes. And then, a month later, I was training alongside them. I chased him 60 metres back and tackled him 5 metres short of the try line, turned the ball over and made sure they didn't score. There's that ruthless competitor in me that would never let anything go. There was something about the physicality of rugby that I particularly loved.
Hi everyone, I'm Arthur Dickins and this is my Rugby Legends podcast. In each episode, I interview an amazing rugby player or coach to get their insight and advice for young rugby players just like me who are keen to learn and get better. In this episode, I am really excited to be speaking with ex-England and Lions all-action flanker Lewis Moody, also known as Mad Dog. Lewis played most of his club rugby at Leicester, where he won an incredible 7 Premiership titles and 2 European Cups between 1999 and 2010. As part of that all-conquering team, Lewis was also capped 71 times by England and was part of the World Cup winning team in 2003. In fact, Lewis won the line-out in the phase of play, which led to Johnny Wilkinson winning drop goal. I hope you find Lewis's knowledge and wisdom has helped us others. Enjoy. Firstly, Lewis, I just want to say thank you so much for doing our podcast. I really appreciate you taking your time.
What a pleasure, mate. And I know I've mentioned it already, but I'm loving your backdrop. It puts mine to shame.
Thank you very much. What I see in your backdrop, you've got a Jaguars helmet. What?
Yeah. So I was actually just watching the NFL in there. The highlights from the Eagles are playing the Kansas City Chiefs. And I've always loved American football. My team were the Bears, and they've been useless basically since I first started watching them, which was 1985, and they won the Super Bowl, which is why I got into it. They've not won anything since. And I got invited to do a training session with the Jacksonville Jaguars. They have this European pathway thing, and the Jags were doing this training program for sort of young and aspiring American football talent. I was 40 at the time. After I'd been retired from playing for nearly a decade, and they were like, "Do you want to have a go?" I was like, "Yeah, I'm in." All the gear, all the pads on. I absolutely loved it. I dislocated 2 of my fingers. It was if I could have been reincarnated, I would be reincarnated as an American football player. It was the most fun I've had. I have to admit, the noise when you make a collision with helmets and pads and everything. And the best bit about it was, whereas in rugby, if I did that now, I'd probably not be able to walk for a day. I'd be so stiff and sore because of all the padding. I didn't feel any discomfort the next day whatsoever. So, I loved it. So I'm not a Jags fan, but vicariously because of that training session, I suppose I do follow them.
That sounds fun.
It was. Do you ever watch any American football?
My dad watches a bit. I used to really like it last year, but then I kind of stopped.
Yeah. Mahomes is pretty useful. They did a whole quarterbacks series on Netflix, which was wicked if you haven't seen it. It was when Mahomes led them to the Super Bowl and almost ruptured his ankle ligaments and still managed to play on. And he was a tough nut.
I saw a couple of highlights of it.
Yeah. Oh, man. In all fairness, I can only really watch the highlights because the American football game's gone for so long.
I know.
Especially the Super Bowl. But I'm sure you didn't want to talk to me about NFL, did you? Maybe it's a sideshow.
So firstly, Lewis, how did you get into rugby and how old were you when you started?
So I got into rugby. I started when I was 5. So I was 5 years old, and I got into it because a mate of mine, I still remember his name. It was actually a friend of my mum's who brought her son over, and he was really keen to go and play rugby, but he didn't have the confidence to go on his own. So he invited me, and I went down and absolutely fell in love with it, because rugby was full contact when I started playing at the age of 5. And, just throwing myself around, tackling people, getting in the mud. Oh, I absolutely loved it. And so I stayed, got really into it. And Matt, after about half a season, decided rugby wasn't for him and left. but because his name was Matt Foster, and I still keep in touch with him every now and again. But yeah, he essentially got me into rugby by inviting me to come and join him.
What other sports did you play growing up, and at what age did you give them up for rugby?
I played all sports. Athletics, I loved. Cricket, I loved. Hockey, I didn't love, but I played it. Football, we didn't play a huge amount of, but whenever there was a chance, I gave it a go. I was probably the best at rugby all the way through, but I was okay at cricket. I was like an erratic fast bowler, basically. And I was the type of enthusiastic young man that would get thrown into any athletics event because I was happy to, try it all. So, because I was relatively quick, I'd get, put in 100, then they'd put me in like that 800, which was awful, but I would still have to do it. And when I was about 17, I remember having to make the decision between doing athletics or cricket in the summer term, because we were a one-term rugby school. And I decided to do athletics because it kept me fit for the rugby season. And that was when I knew rugby was my thing.
Out of the athletics, what would you say was your favourite event?
Probably high jump and javelin.
What was your PB in high jump?
Oh, I don't know if I can remember, actually. I think it was 150 or something like that.
Jeez.
But it felt high at the time. When I go back and see it now, it doesn't look anything. Yeah, high jump. I enjoyed the running races as well. Like the hurdles was always quite good fun because there was an element of jeopardy, right? Because you may or may not make it over the hurdle at any given point and you're quite close. So, there is that opportunity to give the person on your left or right a little nudge as you're going over the hurdles together. But yeah, I really loved athletics, and it set me up. One thing I would always advocate for, so I've got 2 boys, 14 and 17, and they played all sports all the way through. And I just think, I remember my teachers at the time always encouraging me to do as many sports as possible. And I'm glad they did, just I think because the crossover of skill set through all the different sports is so beneficial. Yeah, anyway, I'd always advocate for anyone that you're unsure, never choose one sport too early, because you never know, as you grow, you change, we get faster, we get bigger, we get stronger, or, however we evolve, you never know what you'll be good at. So yeah, keep trying as many as possible.
Do any of your boys play rugby still?
Yes, they both played rugby. My youngest is obsessed with rugby, so he's just got into the first stages of like the pathway. So the PDG, what's that, under 15s at Bath, which he's super excited about. He loves it, loves tackling, super enthusiastic. And my eldest has chosen a career in football.
What position does he play in football?
He's a goalie.
Oh.
Yeah. He's a little bit taller than me now, so he's 6'4". He'll probably be 6'5" by the time he's finished growing. So yeah, he can fill the goal pretty easily, which is handy.
And what position does your youngest play in rugby?
I think he would say it's difficult to, the age group that they're at, difficult to say what position they'll end up playing, but he would say he's a back row.
Oh, no.
Yeah, so he
Like
likes
you.
playing. Yeah, exactly like me, yeah. He loves it. He loves getting stuck into the, all the breakdown stuff, all the tackling. He loves it.
When did you know that fan club was your position? Was this your decision, or did it come from a coach?
So that's a great question, actually, because I was a centre until I was 16 and a half. So my final year at school, yeah, so I was playing first team in lower sixth or year 12. And I loved it. I thought I was going to make it, had county trials, didn't make it into county or Midland as a centre. And during one of my county trials at under 18, under 6, I can't remember now, one of the coaches moved me to back row from centre. I was like, this is going to be awful. And I absolutely loved it. They obviously recognised that I maybe wasn't quite skillful enough to operate in the backs, but I was crazy enough to operate in the forwards. And yeah, so that was it. I was moved during a trial And it was like an epiphany. I don't know whether you've had it, Arthur, when you play sport and you're given the opportunity to play in a different position. You know, you might have resisted it because, you know, I play centre or I play fly half. But actually, because someone took a chance, went, give it a go, and I was, I suppose, brave enough or just following orders, suddenly realised it was absolutely what I loved doing. So essentially chasing the ball around, tackling people as often as I could do. And yeah, trying to inflict as much chaos on the opposition as possible. It was a wise decision, but I think it was Brian Welford who was who coached generations of Leicester Tigers rugby players through the academy. Well, not the academy, the county system. Then, what position do you play, Arthur?
I play fly half.
Do you? Okay. And would you ever consider playing the forwards?
I'm not big enough. I'm only 4'10", so.
Oh, yeah, okay. Maybe you got years of growing ahead of you.
True.
If you had to play any other position, what would it be?
I'd probably quite like to play centre.
Okay.
That'd be a cool position to play. What about you?
Well, I always had, not an argument. I always tried to get my Leicester Tigers coach to play me back in the centres. And he said he would do it for a game. And then he got sacked. So I never got to do it. But I did end up playing on the wing a couple of times for Leicester because when I was young, I was pretty quick. And because I'd come from that sort of centre position, I had a reasonable understanding of what I was doing. But what position would I do you know what? I don't think there was another position I'd like to have played on the pitch other than 6 or 7. I absolutely loved it. It was made for someone like me. Loved running around, loved being a nuisance, and loved looking after his teammates. So yeah, a difficult one.
You debuted for Leicester at just 18. Can you tell us about that?
I left school in the June, and my first team coach at school was a chap called Ian Dosser-Smith, who was a Tigers legend at the time. And he said, see how you go and get on at Tigers training, so which I did. So I went from sitting, you know, in my boarding house at Oakham School in Wharflands, watching Martin Johnson, Rory Underwood, Graham Rowntree, Neil Back, who were all my schoolboy heroes. And then, you know, a month later, I was training alongside them. And 2 months after that, I was asked to play my first game at Welford Road. And there are plenty of words I could use to tell you how I felt in the build-up to that game, Arthur, but I'm not going to use them on here. I was very nervous, we'll put it that way. And I remember sitting in the changing room, and there was guys like Dean Richards who'd played in World Cups and, you know, captain Leicester for donkey's years, and all these just unbelievable rugby players. There was an 18-year-old me, public schoolboy, just been playing first-team rugby at Oakham School, literally 2 months prior to it. And all of a sudden I was playing at Welford Road where I'd been sat in the stands chanting the various Tigers songs. So and I played against Boroughmuir and we won. And it was one of the very few occasions that I scored 2 tries in a game. And they were both from over the halfway line, which was quite remarkable because every other try I scored was from about 3 feet off the back of them all. But yeah, it was one of the proudest and most enjoyable experiences of my life. And what I loved about it the most, Arthur, was I was quite a nervous individual prior to games. I was quite a shy character at school. And I didn't really know any of the guys that I was playing with. But because I loved rugby so much, I was prepared to deal with the anxiety and the nerves and the discomfort and the social interactions and just crack on with it. And I did. And it was the best thing I ever could have done.
Speaking about nerves, how did you deal with your nerves before a big game?
I think in different ways. As you get older and as you mature, you find different things that work for you. I suppose I'll share a couple. So to start with, when I was playing at Leicester, because I got quite nervous, I'd try and do anything I could to distract myself pre-game. So when we got to the ground, I'd go out with a couple of other lads my age, and we'd just get a rugby ball and we'd do keepy-ups, you know, like football keepy-ups. And we had to try and get 20 before we were allowed back inside. And that could take 40 minutes for us to try and get 20 keepy-ups. But it was literally just a way of distracting my mind, because otherwise it's really easy to use up all your emotional energy before the game. And because I'm quite an emotional character and quite a passionate individual, I want to keep all that under wraps until I need it when I get out on the pitch. So that was one way that I did it. As I moved through Leicester and went off to England, you encounter a different type of anticipation and nerves pre-game, because all of a sudden you're in a massive stadium, you've got people watching, more people watching on TV. So I used to, night before a game, the nervous energy would start. So I'd just find little routines. So if there were things I was worried about forgetting, I had a notepad by my bed. So I'd make a note of we had the first involvement. So a list of your first involvements in the game. So it might be line out, scrum, 22, backs play, whatever it was. So I had them listed down. And then if there's anything in particular, like a call or a focus area that I wanted to be really clear and focused on in the game, I'd have that in sort of highlighted at the bottom. And so once I'd written them down, I could then almost forget about it and not worry about it. And then another distraction technique was that we used to go to the cinema. So literally switch your brain off completely. Just go and sit in a cinema with a huge tub of pick and mix. You know, the nutritionist didn't know about that, but we were going to burn it off the next day, so it was fine. And from the movies, we'd try and pick out a try celebration. So whatever movie we watched, we'd pick out a try celebration. And because I normally went with a couple of backs, they'd end up getting to do the try celebration in the game. I mean, I might have got to do about 2 or 3, but it was just a way of relaxing yourself. And then in the morning when you woke up, I'd cast my eye over the list again. I cast my eye over the list before I went to bed. When I woke up, became comfortable, I've got all the calls. And then I had to check that I've got all my kit packed. So go through my bag, check it again, leave it, check it again, check it about 10 times. So you can end up picking up so many superstitions, Arthur, if you're not careful. I remember I got to the point where I had so many little rituals that I did pre-game that I was nervous I was going to forget a ritual. And then that was becoming counterproductive. So I had to sort of cut back the number of things I had over time. But they were a few ways that I used to control my nerves and sort of anticipation pre-game. There was another one as well. As I got further into my career, I actually found it harder to get to the level of emotional readiness that I felt I needed to play at the highest level. And I worked with a leadership coach and a sports psychologist, and he gave me this really cool little sort of tool where he said, you need 3 things. So pick a really important piece of music that, you know, you connect with instantly. You know, a piece of music that when you listen to it, transports you to a place straight away. Might be a beach or a rugby pitch or a changing room or whatever. So pick one piece of music. Take an important possession that is, you know, important to you and only you. And then a world-class moment. So in your mind, pick a moment when you were playing at your best. So when you were world-class. For me, that was playing for the Lions against the All Blacks and playing Richie McCaw. And my item was my namesake. So I'm named after my great-grandfather, Lewis Moody. And on the shelf over here, I've got his First World War Bronze star, and it's a little star. So I'd hold that in my hand in the change room before the game, and I'd pick a song by the Foo Fighters called "My Hero," and for about 2 minutes, I'd just lock myself away in the toilet, holding this star, music on, and just visualizing this moment in time where I felt I was playing at my best. And I suppose the intent of doing all that was to hype it, you know, it was almost to hype myself up enough, because I was finding it really difficult to get hyped up for games the longer I'd played. And that was quite a cool experience to figure out, first of all, how to, in my early career, how to, you know, calm and stay under control and repress those anxieties, anticipations, excitement. And then as I got older, how do I lean into them and how do I actually fire them up again so that I can deliver what I need to on the pitch? Yeah. So those.
Speaking of try celebrations, what was your favourite celebration?
Oh, well, we had loads mapped out. Mine always ended embarrassingly because I got too excited because I didn't score very often. I scored against New Zealand in my first game against the All Blacks at Twickenham, and I had a really nice try celebration lined up from the movie from the night before. I think it was Dude, Where's My Car? And as I scored in the corner, I got kneed in the kidneys and the head by Chris Jack and Dougie Howlett. And I didn't get up for about 2 minutes. So the try celebration went out the window. But the other one I remember was, we watched a movie called Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. And, was it? It might have been another one, Meet the Sparkers, where he does the whole looking at you type thing. And I remember I scored off a kickoff, so sprinted, chased the kickoff, caught it, ran under the post against Gloucester and scored. And I was so excited, I actually poked myself in the eye. Try celebrations didn't normally go that well for me, Arthur, to be honest. Leave that to the Blacks. Leave that to you fly halves.
What skill did you have to work the hardest on as a young flanker?
Ooh, probably the Jackal. So I grew up in a team where Neil Back, who was the best open side flanker in the world, arguably at the time, playing in a similar position to me. I played 6 and 7. And he was remarkable at jackaling. So when I say jackaling, getting in over the opposition ball and stealing it, essentially. And because I was, probably 5 or 6 inches taller than backing, it was harder for me to get. Well, I found it hard to get down there and do that. So that was something that I tried to improve during the course of my career. I could never master it as well as Neil Back, but I did improve.
How did you have any mantras that you live by when you were playing or now?
When I was playing, this will sound very cheesy, but it was that sort of it was just never give up. It was like, and that applied in multiple situations, whether it was on the pitch and we were losing, by 20 points and there was only 5 minutes left, that desire to never want to concede at any point. That was probably instilled in me from a young age by Ian Dosser-Smith, who was my first team coach. But also in training, that then sort of that need to impress in training wherever I was, whoever I was playing with, however long I'd been playing, whether I was senior or junior. There was something about that never giving up mentality that resonated with me, so that the game was never done, a point was never done, a breakdown was never conceded until you move on to the next job. So that was probably one. Is there one that I live by now? There probably is, and I normally have loads of little quotes in the back of my mind, but I suppose it's anything I live by now. So when I retired, I met loads of people when I played that were businessmen that had retired in their 50s, 40s, late 50s, trying to catch up time with their kids again. So one of the mantras I had, actually the only real decision I ever made when I retired, was to make sure that I used my time wisely. And for me, that was making sure I spent as much time with my kids as I possibly could do, because you never get that time back. And now my kids are 17 and 14. So I suppose if there's a mantra to that, it's being present and living in the moment. And I've always tried to do that, whether when I was playing or in retirement, and it served me well till now anyway.
Wow, thank you. I'll use the never give up one when I play my next game.
Yeah, you've got to. There's something about chasing. There's never a lost cause. There was. I remember playing in a sevens game and we were winning, and the opposition broke through the line, and one of the guys next to me said, "Oh, just leave him, just save your energy." I was like, "Leave him and save your energy? What on earth do you mean?" So I chased him 60 meters back and tackled him 5 meters short of the try line, turned the ball over and made sure they didn't score. There was just that. There's that ruthless competitor in me that would never let anything go. Just couldn't let it.
What position did you play in sevens?
I was in the forwards. I would have been prop. Yeah, I was a prop. There's mostly backs that play sevens, really, isn't it? Not many of us forwards. It's probably a couple of flankers would make a sevens team now, but you've got to be rapid. There's a guy I played with called Tom Croft, who was as quick as any of the backs, so he would have been pretty tight.
Is Tom Croft a professional rugby player today?
No, he's retired now. So Crofty's probably 10 years younger than me, but he retired early because he cracked his neck. He was, really talented. Played for Lions, played for Leicester for a long time. Super quick. He was actually a dancer at school, which I think gave him a whole different level of flexibility, agility. And obviously he got mercilessly mocked for that at times when he first turned up and we found out. But it meant he could do things on a rugby pitch that none of us could do. He was really talented.
Anyone ever get in your head before a game?
I don't think so. The only time I was ever concerned about who I was playing against on a rugby pitch was when we played the All Blacks and Jonah Lomu was playing. And I don't know, you may have heard of Jonah Lomu, Arthur, or you may have not, but he was one of the first truly, athletic, powerful, huge was he Samoan or Tongan? I forget now. Apologies, but he was just enormous. And at a time when, we hadn't seen anything like him. And when England played him in the World Cup in '95, he just terrorized the entire team. It was like an adult playing against babies. He was just so dominant. And when I came into the England team in 2000, 2001, he was, still an absolute force of nature. And my first game against the All Blacks, the one in which I scored in, I told you about, he was playing, and I was nervous about having to tackle him. I really was. But that's the only time I think I'd ever been concerned about an opposition player and how I would stop them. Because I love, part of the rugby and sport is the competition. I love the test. I love figuring out how good I am compared to the other individual. And when you play South Africa, you get to see how physical you are, and can you compare with the likes of, Bakkies both and all these unbelievable players. When you played the Australians, it was, could you outthink them because they're so tactical, they're so quick, they're so sharp. And the All Blacks, I suppose, were a mix of everything. So when you come up against Jonah, that was just a total anomaly because we'd never experienced anything like it before. And Phil Vickery, who was probably 23 stone and on my team, and I was about 16 stone as a flanker at that point, probably quite light. I remember Vix being just outside me and Jonah ran straight at him, and I thought, happy days, because Vix is definitely going to be able to stop him. And he literally just bumped him off and ran over him. But it did slow him down enough so that I could sort of jump on his back and hitch a ride until enough of us could pile on him and bring him down. But yeah, he was a really remarkable player, and he set the sort of precedent for what became these enormous, highly skillful, highly powerful backs that we see in the game now.
What Leon Lloyd said is just go for the legs.
Well, they can't run without their legs, Arthur. That is a fair point. Although I never saw Leon make a single tackle, so I mean, I don't know why. He was. I played with Leon for a long time. It was a lot of fun. He was a very good player. But yeah, I think that's probably a fair challenge. The only sad thing when you're playing Jonah Lomu is that his legs are about the size of two small cars. So to get your arms around them, around one, let alone two, was impossible. We had to go with the gang mentality to tackle Jonah. If you go into Google and put in Jonah Lomu, like schoolboy days or early career, you'll be blown away because he literally picks up 6, 7 people and carries them all the way to the try line.
I'll watch that after this.
Yeah.
Did you ever feel intimidated by an opposite number or an opposition pack?
So the only intimidation I felt was Jonah, really, as an individual. As I said, because I like to test myself and figure out how good I was, it meant I needed to test myself against the best players in my position as well. So again, that was another back rower, and that was Richie McCaw. And I found out pretty quickly when I played him for the first time that I had a significant amount of work to do if I wanted to get anywhere near his standard. He was just remarkable. He had a real strength in really low and difficult positions, and I could never quite understand how he managed to stay as strong as he did in those really awkward positions. But yeah, he was. There was no fear or anything like that playing them. There was almost an excitement to understand how far I had to develop to end up, being anywhere near as good as Richie McCaw. So I really enjoyed playing against him. He was just a really hardworking, skillful, and ruthless rugby player. He knew how to get the referees on his side. The team that I was probably most excited to play against, or you asked about the pack, Arthur, that would be South Africa, because I loved the physical nature of rugby. You'll probably listen to a lot of the backs or forwards talk about, the evasion, the movement, the creativity. There was something about the physicality of rugby that I particularly loved. And it was maybe that competitive challenge, it brought out certain inner qualities that you only really found out in individuals when they were really tested in a physical contest. And South Africa always provided it. So playing the South Africans, Arthur, was something I always looked forward to, but with a pang of trepidation because they were massive. If you watch South Africa now, you got Eben Etzebeth and all those giants. And when I was playing, you had Bakkies Botha and Victor Matlock and, all sorts of Scholt Brits and Scholtberger. These guys were just so much fun to play against because they were so tough and so physical. And you knew if you beat or you got the better of South Africa, you knew you would have had to go through some real discomfort to get a win. Do you like the contact? Do you like the physical?
I like it when there's a drizzle and it's a competitive game.
Okay, nice.
What made you successful as a rugby player?
I do not think I've ever been asked that question. What made me successful as a rugby player? I think probably my tenacity. I don't believe I was a good quality rugby player. I was quick, I was skillful, but my persistence, I think, was my strength. The fact that I never gave up on a lost cause. I would chase every kick. I would chase, defensively. I would pressure every individual, every fly half. I would then move on to the next one. There was this tenacity within me and this persistence to want to succeed and prove myself that I think probably meant I got to play for longer than some of the other guys that were more skillful than me. Just because I brought maybe a different level of intensity. I wasn't a hard player. I wasn't tough. I wasn't, any of those things, but I was just tenacious. I loved playing for a team. And when I played at Leicester, playing with my mates, so you mentioned Leon Lloyd, Jordan Murphy, all these lads that I grew up with for years, we were so tight, and that tenacity and that passion grew. The more we grew and got to know each other as a team, the more I would want to do for my team. So yeah, I think that's probably what made me the player I was, because I definitely wasn't the most skillful, but I was probably the most tenacious.
What's the most enjoyable part of playing flanker?
Chasing fly halves off. I generally think for me I was quite a defensive player, so I mean that I enjoyed the defensive element of the game. Because of the club that I grew up in at Leicester, there was a lot of emphasis put on defence, winning games. And my role in terms of getting into a fly half's head and pressuring him early, all those types that I enjoyed, because that was UV the other player, and probably the tackling side of it I really relished, getting stuck into the opposition. Yeah, those two things probably.
And speaking of fly halves, was there any fly half that really got on your nerves that you just wanted to smash?
Yes. Yeah, many fly halves, Arthur. But there was a guy called Quade Cooper who played for Australia, who was unbelievable talent, just so good. And in one game, so it was my first game as captain of England, actually, he utterly humiliated me on about 7 or 8 occasions. I got my positioning wrong, I got my timing wrong, my height, everything I got wrong every time I got near him. And the more I got it wrong, the more he would beat me, and the more I would then overthink it and overchase it, and the more he would beat me. So I think I missed 7 tackles in that game, which was my first game as England captain, when you want to impress. And bearing in mind, we had sort of completion, rates. So if you're making 10 tackles a game, let's say, we would normally have a 95 to 100% completion rate. So it gives you you're allowed to miss 1 tackle basically. So missing 7, it literally never happened in my entire career. I think I'd had about 60 or 70 caps at this point, and I thought I'd never play again. And thankfully, the coaches decided to retain me in the team the following week, and I made it my absolute mission to terrorise Quade Cooper for the entire game, which I did. So from the very first line out, I set up a call which would allow me to get into him, an opportunity to get stuck into him, and I did. I absolutely clattered him for first line out, 30 seconds into the game, and that was it. Once we'd done that, once I was into it, never missed a tackle. And but he really made me, because he was so good, he really made me want to get stuck into him. Andy was an Aussie, so they've always got that bit of edge about him in the chat.
Must have felt good.
It did feel good, yeah, especially after he humiliated me.
And what advice would you give to a youngster who wants to play flanker?
I would say make sure you enjoy what you're doing. Don't focus on just being a flanker. Try lots of different positions. And if you're going to focus on anything, focus on skill and speed over strength and all those other things. Fitness maybe will come into it at a certain point, but if you're playing enough sport at school, you'll probably be getting a lot of fitness anyway. So just that skill set and getting lots of time on the ball and enjoying playing would be my my advice. I don't pigeonhole yourself too early. Don't just think you're a flanker from the word go. You may love that position, but try other positions, try other sports, because it will all benefit you ultimately.
How does it feel playing at Twickenham one week and at your home ground the next?
I always found that strange, actually, because I mean, I was lucky because Leicester had probably the biggest fan base in the Premiership during my playing career. So we sort of had 19 to 20 odd thousand a week. So the step up to Twickenham didn't seem as big. Obviously it was, 80, 90,000. So it was significant, but because also at the time, the majority of my team at Leicester, 7 or 8 of them, were in the England squad with me. So whereas I think if I'd been at Harlequins or Sale or London Irish, the step up would have maybe felt bigger. But because I was training with these guys who were all seasoned internationals, they were so competitive. Our second team was probably stronger than a lot of the other Premiership sides at the time during my era, which meant training was always, super combative and super competitive. So you had to be at your best all the time. So whenever I stepped up into those England sessions, it felt very normal. The hardest thing I think when you move from club to international stage is gelling with players that you spend weekends and weeks learning to tear strips out of because they're the opposition. All of a sudden now they're your mates and your teammates, and how do you build a rapport and a bond with them? I enjoyed that, actually, and it made going back to club rugby and playing against them even more enjoyable.
What other position on the rugby pitch do you rely on the most?
I probably think my other back row colleagues and my fly half. So whether in defence or attack, there's a real link between the fly half and the flanker, especially if you're an open side. Defensively, you need to know that the fly half's in the right position. He's not giving you too much ground to cover, so you can get beaten on the outside. You need a clear line of communication, and you often have little sort of words or messages that you'll use in those one-to-one interactions just between you and the fly half that will mean something specific, like watch the 8 pick, or centre might be coming on a short ball back on the inside. There's all sorts of things. And then the other connection is with the number 8, because if I'm leaving as a flanker, let's say the 8 picks or the fly half stood really wide, so I've got to chase hard to get to that fly half if we're not drifting or pressing, depending on what defence formation we're using. I may have to go hard, which means there's always an opportunity for a cutback on my inside. So knowing that 8 is there and covering my back is also key. And those little conversations that you have when you're binding up on a scrum, you'll be talking to each other, making sure that you're all switched on to whatever eventuality may present itself. But then we would have covered it a billion times in training, because you get the second team to run all the opposition plays. So you've seen it, you've tried it. Doesn't mean you always get it right. But yeah, so the 8 and the 10, I suppose, for me is a 7 or a 6.
What wisdom do you have now that you wished you had when you started out in your career?
I think that's probably quite easy for me because of all the things I've alluded to in terms of my temperament and the way that I played the game. It meant that I had a lot of injuries, and some of them were just part and parcel of playing sport, muscle tears and twisted ankles and all sorts of things. But there are probably some that could have been avoided if I could have tempered my approach to training, or not to matches, because you have to play at a certain intensity if you want to play elite sport. But in training, I think I brought the same intensity, which was detrimental to my health at times. So that would have been my learning. And it's not that people didn't try didn't try to say it. I just, I found it hard to hear when I was a player. I thought it may dampen what I brought to a team. So I would change that now. That would be my piece of wisdom. Would be look after your body, because it's the tool you need to play the game.
Exactly. If you had your rugby career all over again, what position if you had to play any position, what would you play?
I literally can't imagine playing any other position, Arthur, than back row. I would like to have given it a go in the centres, just to see if I could have made it. But I'm pretty confident I wouldn't have done. But it would have been nice to have a run out in one game at least.
What do you miss most about playing rugby?
The competition. I speak to a lot of my old playing colleagues about this, and we all have differing answers to this. I think some of the lads will say the camaraderie in the changing room. I do miss that. The amount of time you spend together in each other's company, that's really enjoyable. You get to know people really well. But the competition for me, you just, outside of the sport, whether I know you would, I could probably make the assumption that a lot of sports people feel this, because there's nothing that compares to the bubble of sport, whether it's rugby, football. It's so all-encompassing, and it's so important to you when you're in it. It's hard to replace when you're out of it. So for me, it's the competitive nature of training, of being in the gym, of banter in the changing room, of the matches. It's having, jeopardy and a reason to want to go out and be successful. But the competitive nature of that is probably why I miss the most, because you can't find it easily in life outside of sport.
That's the same as me. I love competitiveness in the game. In your view, who was or is the most complete back row to play the game?
That is super easy, and I've mentioned his name already. It's Richie McCaw. There are lots of players who were incredible back rowers, but because you said who is the most complete, he was just so good, Arthur. Like, every time he played, he was arguably the best player on the pitch, and he was so consistent. Somehow he didn't get on the wrong side of the referee, which is a remarkable achievement for a back rower, because I seem to piss every referee off. But yeah, whether it was the tackle, the turnover, the chase, the timing of when he sort of chose to go in and contest the ball. He was just, and then when he moved into captaincy, he just had a real calmness. You could see that he was a little bit like Martin Johnson, who was my England captain and my club captain, who was a great leader of people. Richie McCaw seemed to have it. He was a different character, but seemed to have the same qualities that his team aspired to want to be beside him and playing with him, and certainly playing him against him. He was just remarkable. Did
you ever talk to him after the game?
Yeah. Nice guy, quiet chap, very down to earth. Wasn't a big drinker or anything like that. In an era, I grew up in an era where there was probably a little bit of a drinking culture after games, and people go out and have fun together. But yeah, no, Richie was an out and out professional, really nice guy. Obviously, still is. There were lots of guys like that. Schogberger for South Africa, Martin Williams for Wales, Ryan Jones for Wales. Goodness me, Thierry Dutoit, Harry Nordike. There were just so many good players. Yeah, but Richie was he was the god of the back row.
Did you ever get any tips from him?
Not that he ever gave me intentionally. I got tips that I learned from playing against him. But no, didn't get any tips off him, sadly.
Thank you. And last question. Who of your rugby mates do you think would be great on my podcast?
Who of my rugby mates would be good on your podcast? Oh, goodness me. You've had Leo on, haven't you? Jordan Murphy would be quite good fun for you as an Irishman. Oh, you should. Have you ever had Phil Vickery on?
No, I haven't.
Oh, you should get Vix on. He is such a bundle of fun. He's one of the most passionate, lovely human beings you'll ever meet. Wears his heart on his sleeve. He was a Gloucester player who ended up playing for Wasps, very successful. The Raging Bull was his nickname. I reckon him or Jordan Murphy would be my my two names for you.
Thank,
Does that mean I've got to give you their contacts now? I won't do it online.
I just want to say thank you so much for being on our podcast. I really appreciate you taking your time, Lewis.
Arthur, it's an absolute pleasure talking to you, mate, and good luck with the rest of the podcasts.
Thank you.